Hello students, this is your first video in relation to your first chemistry chapter, chemical reactions and equations. Now, in this particular video, we will just try to provide you an introduction towards chemical reactions, how to write a chemical reaction and how do we actually balance it. Now, to begin with, the particular term chemical reaction, remember in our day-to-day life there are different types of chemical changes that take place. Now each of the chemical changes cannot be represented in the way we actually want to show them. So just for our ease and for making the chemical change understandable, we use chemical reactions to depict the process. Now, as being given here, a chemical reaction is a process where the reactant will get converted into a product. So basically there will be a reactant and there will be a product which is formed after the reaction. Now normally chemical reactions can be represented in word form also. So that is called as word equation. Now remember, whenever we are writing down an equation, we put an arrow in between the reactant and the product. Now the arrowhead will always point towards the product and will show the direction of the reaction. Now normally when we are writing down the equation, the reactants are written on the left side of the equation, whereas the products are written on the right side of it. Now, as and when we actually discuss about a chemical reaction, how do we identify a chemical reaction has taken place or not? Now, normally a chemical reaction is identified by any of these four factors. Now, remember the four factors we have already discussed in the class along with examples. I'm here just putting you the major points. So, change in a chemical reaction can be identified by change in state, change in color, release of gas, or change in temperature. Okay, so either of these particular changes might take place, or in one particular chemical change, two or more of these observations can be seen. Now, question normally comes that while we are writing down a chemical equation, whether we should balance it or not. Now remember, balancing a chemical equation is important so as to satisfy the law of conservation of mass. Now this was given by Antoine Lavoisier, according to which it states matter can neither be created nor be destroyed in a chemical reaction. Thus, total mass of the reactant and total mass of the product will always remain the same. That is not going to change. Now, whenever we are trying to write a chemical reaction, so obviously we must be able to know the valencies of each of the elements or the reacting ions. If you do not remember the valencies, it will be difficult for you to put down them in their formulas and then write it down in the chemical reaction form. Okay, so as and when here we have just mentioned a simple equation, magnesium reacting with oxygen molecule to give magnesium oxide. So this is a skeletal equation. Remember, we have not balanced the equation. So any unbalanced equation can be called as a skeletal equation. Now normally, to balance a chemical equation, we should actually follow some steps. Now the normal step that is being followed is by trial and error method, or which is otherwise called hit and trial method. Now what we should actually do, the steps are being given. To balance a chemical equation, we should first draw boxes around each formula. Now you should not change anything inside the boxes while balancing the equation. Okay, don't put anything below, you have to put the value in front only. Now list the number of atoms of different elements present in the unbalanced equation. So you have to check that on both left and right hand side. Check for the number of atoms. Now start balancing with the compound that will contain the maximum number of atoms. It may be from the reactant side or from the product side. So you have to select the element which has maximum number of atoms. Now suppose you are balanced the unbalanced atom. You have to check the correctness by counting the atoms of each element on both the sides. Now normally whenever we are writing down a chemical equation, it is being made more informative by writing down the physical states of the reactants and products along with the chemical formula. So they are usually written in brackets, like gas is mentioned with G, liquid is mentioned with L, aqueous is mentioned with AQ, solid is mentioned with S, precipitate is mentioned by PPT, and so on. So as and when we have actually mentioned here a balanced chemical equation for the reaction of hydrogen and oxygen to give water. Now as and when you have seen in this particular context, as we have discussed about balancing the chemical equation, you have to look to your book, start solving them down and make sure that you are able to do them by your own. Okay, we will continue the discussion with types of chemical reactions in our next video. Thank you.